everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to give more time for other people to join the webinar, and we'll get started in a few minutes. Okay, let's dive in. So welcome everyone to our webinar today, Tips to Increase Your Native Ad Performance. I'm Megan, I'm the moderator here today. And just in case you don't know who we are, Taboola is the world's leading discovery platform, and we work with advertisers and publishers across the globe. And we're here today with Social Native. Social Native is a Taboola creative partner, and they focus on content creation at scale for a fraction of the cost. Liz, the VP of Channel Partnerships at Social Native, is with us today. And from Taboola, Rachel, our Global Research and Insights lead, will be speaking with you guys. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. Any questions that you might have throughout the session, you can use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be monitoring and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can at the end of the session. You guys will also receive a recording of the webinar and the slides via email from us in a couple of days. All right, let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I just wanted to introduce myself very quickly before we get started. My name is Liz Montiel, and I'm VP of Channel Partnerships here at Social Native. And I have the opportunity to work really closely with the social platforms as well as other ad networks, and very closely with the Taboola team, focused on data-driven content creation and optimization. I've been lucky enough to be on the Social Native team for the past 3 years, and then previous before this, I spent my time working at Yahoo with advertisers and publishers.
Cool. Liz, I love this picture of you, by the way.
Thank you.
So my name is Rachel Zalta. I am Taboola's Global Research and Insights lead. My background is in psychology, so you'll be hearing some psychological perspective while I present. I've been at Taboola for 4 years already, and my job here is to study online behavior based on the billions of data points that we have every single day. So just to give you a little bit of a context, we're speaking about the native space. So the native space, just to give you a little bit of context there, when you would see us would be when you are reading an article in your favorite publisher's site. You'll get to the bottom of the article, and then you'll see an interesting feed of content. That feed of content will have both still images with a title, and sometimes you'll also see a video there. So we're going to be focusing mostly on the creative, on the video, and on the image.
Okay, so how important is your creative anyway? I know some people think of creative as something that's a little bit more secondary, especially when you have all these other things going on, but creative actually plays a very, very important role in your larger business strategy, especially in today's world where people are so used to consuming content, especially images and video, and actually 72 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube every second. So it's just the way that we connect with people and the way that your consumers are going to be connecting with your brand. So this is really, really important, especially thinking about like how you're interacting with these different consumers, whether you're targeting millennials or Gen Z. Each group is going to have different expectations of that content. So we're going to dive into a little bit more about the importance of content and the importance of A/B testing. And Rachel, I know you have a lot of insights on how important creative is.
Yeah, totally. And you know, it's really cool because I've worked with with brands before who have their landing page so much, and then the second they change a word or two in their title or they change their image, suddenly everything changes for them. So just by that experience, you can really tell how important a creative is and how impactful it could be.
All right, so we want to ask you guys a question. I'm launching the poll right now. Do you A/B test your own creatives? We'll give you guys a few seconds to answer. 5 more seconds. Okay, it looks like 70% of people do A/B test their creatives and 30% currently don't.
Okay, that is fantastic news to hear that 70% of you are already A/B testing. I feel like you're already so far ahead of the curve because that's really the first step into finding out what content is going to resonate with your target audiences as well as new customers. And I am always continuously surprised on what creative performs best. I know, Rachel, we've had conversations about this where we think about like, we're so used to seeing content on a daily basis that we have a different expectation, but really what the data tells us is the content that's performing best always surprises me. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about, the magic behind doing data-driven content optimization. So here's just a quick diagram to kind of show you. It's a little dense, so we'll walk through it together. But first and foremost, we're going to allow you to create that content. So whether you're creating content in-house, you partner with a creative agency, or you partner with a creative partner like Social Native through Taboola. And this can be anything, whether you're doing studio-produced content, you're doing user-generated content, UGC, or CGC, consumer-generated content. So once you have that, now you get to post that and test it. And this can be across, your paid social, display, email marketing, website. Each of these places, we strongly encourage that you A/B test to see what's going to drive the most performance. So once you have that and you have significant data to do that, what we do at Social Native is we plug that into our own tooling system, where based on that ad performance, we're actually able to identify specific elements within the content that are driving performance.
Yeah, that's definitely cool, definitely useful too. So I guess what we want to do now is just talk about some creative strategies that we've seen that work really, really well from both of our sides. So I'll start with talking about people. So I'm sure you all know that having people in your creative, whether it's an image or whether it's a video, is going to help. It's going to help grab that attention. There are actually many reasons why, but the main reason is related to survival. We're always looking for other humans. We have very strong human social ties. And this is one of the reasons why when we walk into a room, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for other people and we're going to look for other eye contact. So the same thing happens when we're going on a web page. we're going to scroll down and we're going to be looking for other people just because of that instinct that we have. And then if you ask yourself, okay, which picture of a person works well? So the images that we found that work the best are images with some kind of emotion. So it could either be this adorable child that is sad, or it could be a really happy picture. But whenever you could include emotion in your picture, it's going to work really well. And this one's interesting. So there are actually a lot of studies that show that if you look into the eyes of the person that's near you, you can very accurately tell how the other person is feeling. So feel free to try that later. And so we're always looking for that eye contact in order to be able to, make those social ties and see how other people are feeling. And so when we're online, we're also going to be looking for people, especially people that we can make eye contact with. And so how does that translate in the digital world? So when we have pictures of people who, when the picture was taken, they were looking directly at the camera, like this picture here, it feels to us when we look at the picture like he's looking at us. So this works really, really well. And it will work well in terms of getting people to look your way and to look at your image or your creative. And of course, we always want to base all our recommendations on data. So when we look at our data, and I'll talk a little bit about Taboola Trends later on in this webinar, when we look at the data, we see that images with people are doing better than images without people. Specifically, this week is 37% more. And videos, of course, adding people to videos works really well as well. So H&M has this video ad, and we have an eye tracker at Taboola that we've been using a lot. So I just want to play this, and I want you to notice where the person is looking while the video is playing. So when you see this like red in the center and blue in the outside, that's going to be where the person was focusing on. So hold on, let me try to play it. So I don't know if you're noticing, but obviously H&M here are trying to sell dresses, but the person that watched this video was really not looking at the dresses almost at all. They were really looking at people's faces. They were looking at people's eyes and at their facial expressions. And I don't know if this is bad for H&M. Like I think H&M's main objective with this video probably wasn't to sell this dress or another, but instead was to create a bond or an emotional bond between H&M, the brand, and between the person that's watching the video. And that emotion really is conveyed through people's facial expressions.
That's super interesting because that's also what we're starting to see more so across the board. I know in the past, traditionally, when people think about like how they're going to market their product, they really want to put it front and center. But what the data is actually showing us is with a human, what we would consider to be like a human element, where people within the content is actually driving the greater performance. So Match.com is a really great example of that because obviously, they want people to download their app and go onto their website and make a connection with somebody in their area. So they had a pretty particular style of what they were looking for, and they also wanted the content to feel natural, something that you would actually see on someone's dating profile. So when you logged in, it could be someone that you could really match with on the platform. So the way that you can see on the image on the left was their initial creative. They knew that they wanted to have full body shots because that's what their data has told them has consistently outperformed. But ultimately, when they started running that content in paid, what we found was that still when a human was present, but the content had to be shot from the waist up, and the person in the content had to slightly tilt their body, almost how you would in like a school portrait. And they had to be smiling, and they had to be looking directly into the camera. One element we did have to test was glasses. They couldn't be wearing regular glasses or sunglasses. Eyes had to be exposed and looking directly into the camera. And then something else that I thought was very, very interesting, and I think this goes back to what you were talking about for the human emotion, was we A/B tested if they were smiling with their lips closed or with their teeth showing. And ultimately, when they were smiling with their teeth showing was actually driving the greatest increase in performance. So I think that really speaks to like the emotional response that people are having. So, their eyes being exposed, looking directly into the camera. And especially when we think of like dating, that's a very personal thing and there's no like particular formula, but these are the elements within the content that we saw driving the greatest performance.
This is so cool, especially the teeth. And it's something that I definitely want to test on our data as well. So,
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if anybody is on the dating apps right now and they want to A/B test their own content on their own profile, like let us know. Be curious to see like how that performs just for a individual consumer as well.
totally.
So this is a really great example of a brand named Rock Her Jewelers, and this is going a little bit another layer deeper. So here you say, okay, so I know that it's great, having a human or human element in the content is performing, but that was lifestyle content and they were trying to sell a different message. How can I incorporate a product? So Rocker came out with a new line of engagement rings and wedding rings. So they knew that they wanted to have people visible in the content, but they really wanted to have that product front and center. So what we were able to test was the initial creative on the left. So you can see that there is a girl present and the person that was gifting her the ring is holding her hand, and the ring is really front and center as the primary focal point. But ultimately what we found was that even though there was a human element, it actually, when they were able to see the emotion on the person's face, was the top performing creative. So as you can see, the product is still a focal point because it is towards the front and center, but it's a little bit lower. And then something else that the brand was testing with was warm versus cool color palettes, because this is something that we also saw primarily against their target audience and lookalike audiences, that color tones in the content can have an impact as well. But I thought this was, particularly interesting about how, playing with different human elements within the creative, but really evoking that emotion with your consumers. And then another example I wanted to share was Crocs. I particularly love them just because they've really dived headfirst into, creating user-generated content. So as you can see, the images that are on the left, we have a girl just, by herself by the pool, and then we also have another group of people. I particularly love this because Crocs actually activates their own consumers to create their content. So it's people that are brand loyalists, they're really showing how they would style the product. So they knew that UGC was really performing the best for them, but we needed to test different types of UGC because I feel like different people have different classifications for what UGC is. Some people think, oh, it's anybody who's my consumer who's creating content for me. But, maybe that person's a better, maybe they happen to be like a professional photographer or something like that, versus somebody else who's just shooting that content, with the smartphone that they have in their back pocket. So this is something that we tested with them, taking like true UGC, like smartphone content versus like more, what we consider like high-end studio produced. But what we found was that the UGC that felt more authentic and genuine consistently outperformed. So like the images on the left, it feels a little bit staged and posed, even though, they're just standing there, or it looks like, they may have been told to smile and raise their hands in the air. So it feels a little bit more forced versus the images on the right, where it looks like they're capturing a little bit more of a candid moment and more street style. So I would say like definitely focus and test on playing like UGC versus studio produced assets, and then also like really focusing in on being authentic and genuine, because consumers are aware of that now. So when they see something that feels very forced, they're going to scroll right past it.
Yeah, and like the way I see the images on the left, the person that took this picture was probably like counting, 1, 2, 3, smile, and they're like posing and smiling. While on the right, it kind of feels like, the person that's in the picture is kind of playing around, doing their thing, and then the photographers, doing their thing too. But yeah, it feels definitely less posed. I like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely so.
So we found something similar looking at our data. So a lot of advertisers will originally choose to use like very staged or more like stock photo type images, like the one here on the right. And what we found, which was pretty surprising to us in the beginning, but it makes a lot of sense now that we think about it, is that more of the real authentic images are doing much better than these like staged pictures. So similar to what you said about Crocs. And I think the reason why it works specifically on the native platform is because of the user mindset. So somebody is on their favorite publisher site, they're reading an article, and they get to the bottom of the article. They're not really interested in clicking on an ad, but they might be interested in clicking on an interesting article that might be about a brand, but they want to click on an article on content. And I think that when we use a more authentic image in native, it feels like an article. It doesn't feel like an ad. So that's the way I kind of look at this. We want to look less like ads and more like real. So using user-generated content, like the user-generated pictures that we had from Crocs, is really a great strategy. If we think about it from the video perspective, so this is a cool piece of data that was really surprising for us. So we analyzed our videos, like very, very high quality videos, and then standard quality videos. And we found that those very, very high, like extremely professional videos were actually not doing as well as the standard quality. And it's surprising in the beginning, but it connected to that, real feel. Like we want people to feel like this is authentic content. And even in video, we see that people are connecting more to this authentic content. And then when we're thinking about video, even when we're trying to get across some kind of message, or we're trying to show our consumer our brand or our logo, I want you to look at this video here and see how IHOP chose to integrate their logo into their video. Hold on. So again, follow the eyes. So in the beginning, it looks like the person watching this video was really just focusing on the syrup falling out of the pancakes, which makes a lot of sense. That's what I was looking at too. And they didn't even realize the IHOP brand, logo is back. So I'll show it one more time. And then at a certain point, they realize, they're looking at it here. But it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like an advertisement until, these kind of things fall down. And it really allows the person watching the video to start engaging with the video in a more authentic way, in a more real way. And then only afterwards, showing them the logo and showing them whatever brand message they're trying to show the consumer.
That's really cool, because that's even like consistently what we're starting to see across the board. Because I know historically, especially when it comes to video, people want to subscribe to the television commercial or TVC format, where really like they're slapping their logo front and center. But really what we found is like when you are incorporating your branding or logo within the first 0 to 3 seconds, but incorporating it in a more organic way, just the way IHOP is done here, kind of in the background on the mug, like that's really where we see the performance. And that's kind of coming in like at like the 1 to 2 second mark where the eye is shifting. So that's phenomenal. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, these eye tracking studies are so much fun. I love them too. Okay, so another strategy that's important is to recognize who your target audience is, and then call out your target audience. Either call them out by using an image that is similar to them, or call them out in your title. So in your title would be saying something like, millennials are loving this product or something like that. If we're thinking about this brand, so this is a brand for hearing aids, most people that are going to be using hearing aids are going to be probably older. And so using an image of a person who's a little bit older would probably be better than using an image of somebody who's much, much younger. So this is called the similarity effect in psychology. And this is something that's important to do, again, also in the image and also in your title. And I want to take a step back for a second here and try to, I guess, challenge ourselves to ask ourselves who our target audience is, and not settle for just one main audience. So a lot of people will say, we'll have one main audience or one main audience in mind when they're putting together their creatives. And what I try to do is to think about who else might be interested in our product, and then to test those in our creatives, those people in our creatives. So using images that are similar to them or calling them out in the title itself. So the example I like to use for that is this example of this woman who's wearing this really cool jacket. So who would probably be interested in this jacket? Who's the main target audience? So it would probably be millennials. And I want to give you guys a couple of maybe seconds to think about who else is interested in buying this jacket. And yeah, so you can actually answer that in the question module. Feel free to just type it in and Megan will read out your answers. So again, the question is, who else might be interested in this product? Let's try to like broaden it, not only thinking about the millennials.
Okay, we're going to give you guys a few seconds to submit answers. So some of our responses are not necessarily millennials, but women from other generations as well.
Okay.
Country music fans.
Cool.
Teenagers.
I like that one.
Anyone interested in Western wear? Moms of millennials.
Cool.
Influencers, and those are some of the big ones.
Okay, those are really, really great. So I'll tell you the ones that I was thinking about. I was thinking that millennials would be interested, maybe professional people would be interested in wearing this, people who are really fashionable and they care a lot about fashion. What about people who get cold, right? This might be a warm jacket that they might want to purchase. And how about people who want to gift this to their child? So like you were saying before, Megan, that a mom might want to buy this. They might want to buy it for their millennial daughter. So always thinking about who the main target audience is and who else might be interested. And then taking these different groups and trying to put together creatives that are going to target those specific groups would be really what I suggest in terms of how to do this in the best way.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think there's a lot of weight that goes behind creating, what we would consider like a one-on-one personalized marketing strategy, especially when you're thinking about your target audience, but as well as like new audiences. So Rockport Shoes is a really good example of a brand that had a very clear vision of who their target consumer was and what type of content resonated with them. So they came to the table with a very strong hypothesis of what they wanted to test. So the two images that are on the left, they knew that what we consider to be product flat lays. So that's where you see the shoes styled with some other accessories. You've got a hat and sunglasses and jeans, something that would be complementary in how they would style those shoes. And then also they knew that they wanted to show full body shots, so the product actually on someone and how they would wear it. But that presents some unique challenges, especially like when you're trying to cut through a lot of the noise and have your content stand out and really capture attention. Me personally, I'm obsessed with dogs, especially a French bulldog. So if I see that content, I'm not necessarily going to notice that this is something targeted for shoes. I'm just going to think, wow, that's a really cute dog. And then also, there's just different things that you have to consider. And even though you think you might know exactly who your consumer is and what's going to resonate most with them, like always be willing to test. And that's really where Rockport started to see a lot of success. So ultimately what the data was telling us was that, so one hypothesis was correct, content that consistently outperformed was when the product was actually on the person. But something else was really making that product front and center. So actually making sure all content was shot from the knee down with the shoe, both shoes. That is something we actually A/B tested as well, if there was just, more so one foot in frame versus the other. But having the shoes on both feet and shooting that content from the knee down. But then also something, they had different audiences in different cities. So they wanted to create more of a, one-on-one content strategy and show more localized content. So you can see the girl on the right, she's more of an urban landscape sitting on cement stairs, where the guy wearing the jeans, you see the mountains in the background. So that really showed the diversity of the product and how you could style the shoes and use them in different places. And then I particularly love Dollar Shave Club. They're definitely a brand that has leaned in very heavily. Like all the decisions that they make are 100% data driven. And that's really, really important because, like I said before, I'm continuously surprised about what content actually performs best. But once they kind of knew exactly like what static images were performing with them, they knew that they had to make the shift over to video or, just motion content. So one thing that they did with that is once they knew what was performing well for them for their static images, they just used that to graduate and add motion to it. So looking at the image on the top left, they knew that when they were showing something that was like an unboxing and showing everything that you would get in one of the monthly subscription boxes, you may think like, this is kind of weird, there's shaving products on a beach backdrop. But again, like I said, we're always consistently surprised. This was one of the top performers because they thought, no, all the content should be shot in a bathroom or in a bedroom, somewhere where you may actually be using the product, but data's told us something very, very different. So ultimately, they wanted to play on that and start adding motion. So as you can see from the videos, we have different unboxing. So here we kept it to where someone may traditionally use it in their home, but then we also wanted to, test and incorporate different pops of color and different ways to show and demonstrate the products. Because again, different things are going to resonate with different consumers. And then another element that we found that was consistently driving performance was going back to the human element. And even though this is traditionally, they think Dollar Shave Club might be, a product geared more towards men, but we actually found when it was females that were present in the content, it was always actually outperforming. And when the razor was in their hand, and then even taking that a step further, wearing shades of red or pink nail polish. So once they knew that was kind of the formula, they wanted to start incorporating and testing different human elements. So the video with the guy actually, applying the product to his face, he's an actual Dollar Shave customer, and they sent him the product and asked him to create this video in his bathroom. Because again, they know what works, they want to test it, but they're also open to thinking outside the box. And this is also where you'll find a lot of really great examples too. So playing off that human element, they asked someone to create a little stick figure. So as you can see, he's got a beard, he applies the product, he's shaved, and now he's got a great little mustache. So this is something that's like a really good example of that like thumb stopping content when someone's scrolling, that they're going to stop and think like that's kind of fun. It's delighted me. I'm going to be more interested in learning about your product. And there's a million different ways that you guys can look for inspiration, whether that's from an in-house team, but I know, Rachel, you also have some really great recommendations for where you can find inspiration.
Yeah, so I mentioned before trends.taboola.com. Trends is a website that what we do on Trends is that we take every single one of the items that ran on Taboola's network every single week, and we'll analyze them for dynamic best practices. So basically, every Sunday we'll see which kind of images did well, images with people or images without people. Consistently, images with people wins. Images taken outdoor or indoor, what kind of videos are working, what kind of words are working. And what's really cool here is that you can actually filter it by your category, your platform, your language, or your country. So this is a great source for inspiration if you're thinking about what you want to A/B test. Looking here and looking at what's working for your category or country can be really cool, and it's definitely data based, which is something that I recommend as well.
I love that. I am a huge fan of Taboola Trends. And again, it's really good when you think of like a buyer specific vertical. If you think like, okay, I don't necessarily know where I need to start, but like it's a really great jumping off point to see like what's performing well, and just to kind of get you started and to give you different hypotheses of what you want to test. And I feel like this is definitely the case with Overstock. So they were definitely one where they were like, hey, we want to start testing less studio produced content and actually start testing more UGC. But they had a really unique challenge because they were trying to feature rugs. And there's really so many ways that you can feature a rug, and it only has so many uses. So they just decided that they were like, okay, let's start testing studio produced, images of the rug, and let's actually have it look more UGC. So it actually is in somebody's home, it's shot on a smartphone, and they thought that this would kind of be the step in the right direction. And they were definitely right, but ultimately like what the data was showing us, that it doesn't always have to be the product taking up like 70+% of the frame. What we found was that when the rug was styled with 3 or more complementary items, and then one of those being an organic element, so think like a plant or flower, and having a more stylized approach was really what was driving the performance for them. And what we found was that people were, especially when you think of like home decor and things like that, people are always looking for inspiration of how they can style their homes. So like the image on the left, even though it's a beautiful image of the rug and you know what it's going to look like and see the full print, it doesn't necessarily give you the inspiration that you may be looking for of how you can style it in your own home or office or wherever you're going to be using it. So I know this kind of differed a little bit from what was on trends. And we do see that occasionally, like some people are so used to like sticking in their swim lane within their vertical and like subscribing to, one particular method of what content is going to perform best. But really when you start testing and then really let the data inform what that's going to be, I think you're going to find a lot more success.
Yeah, totally. And if I try to connect this to what we see on trends, one of the things that we're seeing is that images taken outdoors are doing better than images taken indoors, even for the home category. And when I look at these images, maybe that organic element kind of gives maybe a little bit more of like a real feel or an outdoor feel. And that's why it's, I don't know, but this is really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it always differs, and especially like, again, like I know we're using technology like machine learning and artificial intelligence, but ultimately, like, we're still a little bit of a ways away of like, like tech being able to identify what is that human response. So again, there is going to be a little bit more to that, but I love the idea of testing different creative like inside versus outdoors and seeing like how that really resonates with different audiences.
Yeah, totally. So I end with talking a little bit about the title, or just giving a suggestion for a tool about the title, since we spoke mostly about the image or the video. So the title is actually really important too. Obviously we suggest A/B testing titles, and one of the tools that we have that's actually pretty new on the trend site on trends.taboola.com is this one. It's a title analyzer or a title predictive tool. And what you can do on this tool is you can actually add different titles that you're thinking of running, and you can see which one has the highest predictive CTR according to our algorithm right now. So it's a really great place to start when you're trying to think about what title to use. And then you can always change one word, add one word, change the order, whatever else you want to do, and see if it's increasing the predictive CTR or is the predictive CTR, getting lower. And just play around with this until you see some really high predictive CTR titles. So this is something that I would suggest from the title front. Cool. So just a few takeaways. Creatives are really important. Including people in the creative is going to be really helpful. Choosing authentic images or real images is definitely something that both Liz and I spoke about today. Being open-minded about your audience, relying on data, either your own internal data or sites like Trends, and always keep testing. That is definitely really important.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very, very much. So if you haven't been asking any questions during this webinar, I'd like to invite you to ask any questions that you might have now, but I think we've gotten some really cool ones that we can get started with. So one of the first from a variety of people, there's some interest in learning a little bit more how your eye tracker works, Rachel, and exactly what types of content you can use it on. There was a question if it's just videos or does it work for static content as well?
Yeah, so it works for everything. We've been testing it, just as we wanted to understand the user experience a little bit more. So we got people to sit in front of a homepage and scroll down and see what they're looking at or what they're not looking at. Consistently, of course, I'm sure you guys know this, people are not looking at banners, right? So that's something that we all know about banner blindness. So we also like to kind of study the user behavior using these eye trackers, try to understand what kind of placements are good and what kind of placements are not so good for attention, and try to understand what is grabbing people's attention. So pictures of faces or emotional faces, a few things that we mentioned today, and obviously a lot other things as well. So we use the eye tracking for that kind of user experience study, but we've been using it a lot for video because we're working a lot with video today, and just in order to understand more what those best practices are, what is working in video. It's we always like to base our recommendations on data, and this is like very pure data, right? You can't really control where your eye is going when you're watching a video. So I really like to use this tool when I try to understand what are the best practices in video and try to back it up with these kind of eye tracking tools.
Got it. Awesome. So jumping a little bit back to the creatives here, there were a couple of questions coming in about authenticity, which we know is a really hot topic right now. And both of you sort of talked about people in creatives and looking directly at the camera, leaning a certain direction. Do you guys consider this authentic? Would you suggest avoiding stock photos? How do you follow these trends and continue to be authentic as well?
Yeah, so I can take the first part. I think there's a few different ways that we can look at authenticity because, again, creative, even though we're really trying to take a heavily data-driven approach to it, there's always going to be a level of subjectivity. Something that resonates with one person may not necessarily resonate with another for different reasons. But what I really find is, like, when it comes to authenticity is like UGC. Whether you're using influencer content or actually like getting content from your consumers, they're really looking at it through their own unique lens. And I feel like they kind of know what resonates with different audiences and like something that speaks to them of like how they would capture your product or how they would want to market it. So I think there's a few different ways that it can be looked at, but ultimately what we see is like anything that feels a little bit more UGC, like something that your friend could have shot and that you may actually see like in your feed on social platforms is really like consistently performing across the board, which has been interesting because it's a more of a shift because traditionally people are used to seeing very high gloss content. So it's really interesting to see like the rise of UGC.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I know that a lot of advertisers really have no other choice but to use stock photos. And in that case, I don't think it's like a definite no-no, but I do think that even within stock photos, you can find photos that feel more on the stage side, like someone just said 1, 2, 3, shoot, and then it was photoshopped to make it look perfect. And you could find stock photos that have a more like real or natural feel. So I would suggest going with the latter.
Awesome. So when it comes to choosing content for specific audiences and verticals, what type of content do you find works best for different target groups? Do you find that it changes across different target groups and verticals? Or do you see these trends across the board that we're mentioning today?
Yeah, so I would say there's definitely some similarities across verticals, but then there's also some nuances, especially when we think of like, finance or health or things like that. I also know autos can present a really unique challenge because, you're selling a car, but really like, asking your consumers who have that particular model to create content on your behalf can be very challenging. But ultimately, I would say like there isn't unfortunately like one particular formula that works well. I would just say like if you kind of have seen directionally what's performing well for you, build off of that and just start testing different elements so you can build on top of that. Like if you know that, having the product, like if you sell shoes, actually having the product on someone's foot, see if it makes sense to style it differently. Or, if you have them, to Rachel's point, indoor versus outdoor and see how that can impact performance.
Great. Sorry, I was talking and hadn't unmuted myself yet. So thank you. We only have a couple of minutes left, but we have a couple of direct questions for Taboola and a couple of directly for Social Native. So I'll just say them both and you guys can go. So in terms of specifically the Taboola trend site, how do we know what's working for our competition in certain verticals and where does the trends data come from? And for Social Native, how specifically do you guys analyze different performance of content?
Cool. So I'll grab the Taboola Trends one. So we get the data, as I said before, from like Taboola's actual items that are running on our network. So we take every single one of the items that ran on our network and we'll take an average of every single image that had a person and the average CTR of every single image that had a person and the average CTR of every single image that did not have a person. And then we compare those two CTRs to see which one's higher, and if one of them was higher, so what the percentage increase was. And that's basically what we have in trends. And then in terms of the competition, so that's a good question. So how do you know what your competition is doing by looking at trends? So obviously we don't have the specific people's specific creatives on trends, but we have aggregated data. And if you actually filter by your specific country and your specific category, what you're able to see is the creatives that are working well for everybody else in your vertical. So it's a type of like competitive analysis, and a lot of people are using that for inspiration on what kind of things they should be testing. So I hope that answered your question.
And then for the social native side, so how are we actually doing content analysis? So how we do it at Social Native, it's a mix of machine learning and AI. So basically we're able to match the content back with the ad performance, whether you're running that across Taboola, paid social display, wherever you might be doing that. And then looking at those different data cues and then looking at the content analysis. So basically when you think of like how a machine would look at the creative, they're looking at it by pixel and then identifying what elements. So you can extrapolate like, okay, there's a human. If it says that it's a human, is it male or female? What ages might they be? What ethnicity? Different things like that. But then also seeing, breaking that down even further, like what percentage of the frame are they taking up? What's the emotional response that they're resonating? We look at all those different things and then use that to come up with what we call optimization opportunities. So saying these are the findings, and then we'll present that to the client teams to let them decide if it's something that they want to test, because I know sometimes it sounds a little bit off in left field. Imagine Match.com, we're like, okay guys, it's really important you have to A/B test teeth showing versus no teeth showing. Sounds kind of crazy. So I think that's one level of importance of just like being open to testing that, and because the data is going to take you to a really unique place. But if you keep an open mind, I think you're going to find a lot of success.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time. Thank you both so much for this awesome presentation. And for all of our attendees, I did mention this at the beginning of the webinar, but if you joined a bit late, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar as well as the slides in a few days. So thanks to everyone and hope to see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.